The 8th generation Corvette is almost here. What are your thoughts on this new design? Is it a winner, or is it a big step in the wrong direction? Believe it or not, a Corvette with the powertrain mounted midships is nothing new. Step into the lounge and let's talk about the predecessors to the mid-engine Corvette. Well, the day is almost here. Chevrolet is about to unleash their all-new mid-engine Corvette to the public. There's a lot of buzz going around and videos with camouflage prototypes driving on the streets, and tons of speculation over how the finished product is going to eventually look. Well, very soon we're going to find out just how close or how far off these predictions have been. But as I mentioned before, a mid-engine Corvette is really nothing new. Chevrolet has been toying with the idea since the 1960s. Let's take a look at how things began. The Chevrolet Corvette was introduced to the world in 1953. It was a sleek, fiberglass-bodied roadster designed by legendary Chevrolet designer Harley Earl. It was met with rave reviews from everyone, especially engineer and race car driver Zora Arkus-Duntov, the man who not only fell in love with the design of the car, but could also see a future of enormous potential with the new Corvette. Zora put his thoughts to pen and paper and sent it to Chevy's chief engineer, Ed Cole, which must have given quite an impression. Shortly thereafter, Zora found himself in an interview with Cole and co-engineer Maurice Ollie, and on May 1st, 1953, hired him as an assistant staff engineer. And wait a minute, just who in the hell was Zora Arkus-Duntov anyway? He was born Zora Arkus to Russian Jewish parents in 1909 Belgium. Because of his background, he spent part of his years growing up in Berlin, Germany, as well as Leningrad, Russia. As a teen, his parents divorced and his mother remarried, taking on the last name of Duntov, a name he would also add to his own. Growing up an avid race car driver, he earned a mechanical engineering degree and joined the French Air Force in 1939 to fight against the Nazis. When France surrendered, he, his wife Elfie, brother Yura, and parents escaped to Portugal and then to the United States in a series of events that could be a feature-length movie in itself. Once in the States, he and his family settled in Manhattan, where he went into business with his brother. The company was named Ardun, a combination of Arkus and Duntov, where they developed and sold an overhead valve cylinder head for Ford's flathead V8. The Thunderbolt flathead was a popular engine in the day, but suffered from overheating problems. Ardun's new cylinder head moved the valves from the inside of the block to the heads, featured hemispherical combustion chambers, and gave the engine a true fourth exhaust port, a vast improvement over the Siamese center exhaust ports, the major source of the overheating problem. Not only did these heads solve the overheating issue, but they improved breathing so well that they were able to squeeze a whopping 300 horsepower from the former flathead. In addition to the business and engineering, Zora continued to race and even competed in the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1952 and 53, driving for Allard. So it's safe to say that when it came to the automotive world, Zora wasn't an unknown. He was very well known and respected worldwide in his own right. And when it came down to sports cars, Zora Arkus-Duntov was the man. So when he first saw the 1953 Corvette, he could see a world-class sports car. So back to our story. Chevrolet hired Zora to provide his input on the Corvette to make it a true American sports car. One thing a sports car needed was some horsepower, and the Blue Flame Straight 6 wasn't cutting it. It was replaced with the 265 V8. And soon after that, Zora was promoted to engineering coordinator. From there came 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Then the development of the Rochester fuel injection system. And after that, Zora was promoted to director of Chevy's high-performance vehicles, which meant that he could pursue one of his loves, competing at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and the Corvette was the perfect platform. The Corvette was already in GT racing, and the rivalry with the Shelby Cobra kept the competition fire stoked. Now, while I'd love to seriously dive into the development of the Corvette year by year, this is about how the mid-engine Corvette came into being. And, well, it sort of began with this car, the CER V1 built in 1959. I say sort of because I don't think making Corvettes a mid-engine car was a serious endeavor at this time, although this is a mid-engine vehicle. Standing for Chevrolet Experimental Research Vehicle, the CERV-1 was more Formula One than any Corvette we've seen. Powered by a 353 horsepower all-aluminum small block V8, the CERV-1 was a test vehicle in developing the four-wheel independent suspension that ended up in the second-generation Corvette. But it also showed that Chevrolet could indeed build a mid-engine car, and build it well. So while the CERV-1 had a slight influence on the mid-engine Corvettes, this vehicle was the one that truly presented the case to mount the engine amidships. Yes, according to the Gearhead Lounge, the vehicle most influential in even causing Chevy to consider building a mid-engine Corvette was, believe it or not, a Ford. Now make no mistake, the largest influence in the mid-engine project was the man himself, Mr. Arkus-Duntov. But there needed to be something that would make the execs at Chevy sit down and ask, why aren't we doing that? And if you didn't already recognize it, this vehicle was the Ford GT40. Based on the Lola Mark 6 GT, the GT40 was developed through a joint venture between Ford and Carroll Shelby. The end result was a mid-engine, sleek and lightweight GT car that spit fire up and down the road courses, and there was no way the Corvette was going to compete. That's why they pulled the trigger on the mid-engine Corvette. The CERV-2 was Chevrolet's first true venture to make the mid-engine Corvette. Built in 1964, this true roadster featured a monocoque chassis and a very advanced all-wheel drive system. The car began life powered by a 490 horsepower 377 small block that was later replaced by a 550 horsepower 427 big block. As popular and well received as the prototype was, GM execs felt the car was too far off the target they had set for the Corvette and feared losing sales due to the car being such a radical change from the norm. The project was eventually killed. In 1968, Chevrolet built the XP880, otherwise known as the Astro II. This concept boasted a mid-mounted 427 V8 that produced 390 horsepower that was pretty close to what it would look like if it had made it to production. However, it was 1968, so probably would have had some bumpers put on it and some headlights added that had to be the correct height, so the sleek look would have no doubt been tainted after approval. Chevrolet used a good deal of off-the-shelf items to keep costs down, but it was still expensive to produce, causing the concept to never see production. The XP882 was built in 1969 and made its debut in 1970. Although in the beginning, it was dead before it even got started. John DeLorean, Chevy's GM at the time, wasn't in favor of the project and canceled it. However, when Ford debuted their De Tomaso Pantera, DeLorean recommissioned the project and had it cleaned up for the 1970 Detroit Auto Show. Powered by a 400 cubic inch V8 at the time, the car was a hit with its sleek looks and gull-wing doors. The response was so good that in 1972, they developed the XP895. While the body looked pretty much identical to the XP882, it featured an aluminum body, and the 400 cubic inch V8 was replaced with a 420 horsepower 4-rotor Wankel engine. It hit the show circuit alongside the XP897 GT, another mid-engine Corvette prototype, but equipped with a 2-rotor Wankel engine. Surprising how much it looks like a Chevy Monza, right? Not to mention, Zora hated this concept. Overall, the rotary engines came out at the wrong time because of the times they were in. The world was in the middle of trying to produce fuel-efficient engines that were clean running, and the rotary engine was neither of these. So, the XP895 was shelved, and the XP897 GT was sold. In 1976, the XP895 was revamped once again with the removal of the 4-rotor Wankel engine and replacing it with the 400 cubic inch V8 it once had. It was dubbed the Aerovette and slated for production in 1980. Everything seemed to be a green light, but then Duntov retired. And with the absence of other mid-engine Corvette supporters, GM top brass didn't want to rock the boat and kept the current generation Corvette as is. The next time a mid-engine Corvette prototype hit the show circuit was 1985 with the Corvette Indy. This was the most radical yet, powered by a 2.6-liter V8 built by Lotus. This twin-turboed and intercooled dual overhead cammed 32-valve super small V8 churned out an estimated 600 horsepower. Everything in this car was cutting edge, from the composite monocoque chassis to the active suspension. The Corvette Indy was ahead of its time. It featured all-wheel drive, all-wheel steering, and a rear-view camera. It also had ABS, traction control, and drive-by-wire. Unfortunately, all the things that made the Corvette Indy cool was what made it expensive, and that would make it very unattractive to buyers. And frankly, producing a 600 horsepower 2.5-liter V8 for the street and expecting it to be reliable was asking way too much. So it was back to the drawing board. Chevrolet came out with a kinder, friendlier mid-engine concept dubbed the CR-V3. The high-strung, crackhead F1 screamer of an engine was replaced with a larger, easier-to-service 5.7-liter twin-turbo V8 that produced even more horsepower at 650, but in a much more reliable form. The CR-V3 still retained the all-wheel driving and steering. Basically, it was a toned-down version of the Corvette Indy. Unfortunately, it was still way too expensive to produce. 2005 saw the introduction of the new Ford GT, a dazzling mid-engine Ford that paid homage to the original GT40, yet bringing up the performance level. Then Ford shattered all barriers with the introduction of the second generation Ford GT in 2017. It even went back to Le Mans to reclaim the title. The world had known about the GT since at least 2015, giving GM plenty of time to get the ball rolling for the Corvette. And now, here we are, in 2019. Chevrolet finally got the green light, and they finally taken it to the end zone. Unfortunately, Zora Arkus-Duntov did not live long enough to see his biggest dream come to life as he passed in 1996. However, his name just may live on as a Corvette trim level. He always knew that the Corvette had the potential to not only compete with the world as a sports car, but could dominate as well at a much lower price than the others. Something the Corvette has been very adept at. With its unveiling this July, the world is going to see a brand new sports car that has supercar potential, which may only be a supercharger away. This is not only a new generation for the Corvette, this is much more than merely transitioning from the 7th to the 8th generation, but it's the beginning of a new era, full of new challenges and new opportunities. The Corvette is merely following the path it's supposed to follow, and that's being a sports car, America's sports car. A sports car that's destined to be the best in the world, but not exclusive to merely the richest in the world. Here at the Gearhead Lounge, we can't wait for this newest era of the Corvette.